look like we're in business. Oh, and then I kick it. Okay, we're here in Klondike Place at Barrhead, Alberta with Merle Galbraith. Merle is 95 years old. She's hoping to get her driver's license yet this year. And my name is Iris Tufton. I am with the Sangudo Friends of the Library, and we are making these recordings and hoping that people for many years to come will want to see what our seniors have to say and teach them about history. So Merle, we're going to start with your birth family. Tell me about your parents, where they came from.
My mother's parents came from Denmark, and they settled over in the United States, in Iowa. And my father's parents were from Iowa as well. And they came up to Gwyn, Alberta, just about at the same time. And that's where I was born.
Okay. But they weren't married when they came up?
No, they were married after they came up.
Oh, okay. All right, tell me about your family, your siblings, and where you fit in that bunch.
First of all, I had two sisters, and one was 11 and a half years older than I was, and the other one was 6 years older than myself.
Okay, and their names?
And Grace, and she married Pearlie Trelevin, and Ina was married Henry Nicholson.
Okay, tell me a little bit more about your parents. What do you recall of them?
Well, my father liked music, and he was callers at square dances for many years, and they did like dancing themselves. And when they would first go to the dances and I was too young to be accompanying them, I stayed with my mother's parents, and they only lived 2 miles from us, and my father's parents only lived 1 mile from us. So this was around Gwyn.
Yeah, okay. So when did you come out to this area?
1936 we came out to Cher Hill, south of Cher Hill.
Did you buy a farm there or rent a place?
My mother took the homestead because my father put in it for one in Timu, and they decided they would rather come out there. And I was so far from school that I boarded out for the rest of my life.
Oh my goodness. So what was your first school?
My first school, where I was teaching, or where I went
No,
to school?
where you went to school.
Well, first of all, I was at Roseland School, and that is in the Gwyn district.
Oh, okay.
And then when I was in grade 3, we moved out, and then I was in Divide School.
And where is Divide?
Divide School. Divide School was south of Cher Hill.
Oh, okay.
It's been closed for many years.
Yeah.
It was a one-room school, of course.
And what do you recall of your early school days, this one-room school, about your teachers?
Teachers were usually I never had any problem with my teachers. So, whether they were so good or I was scared, I don't know. But I didn't think I was scared of them. I always thought they were friendly and were good to me. And even when I went into Edmonton and went to school there, because I took grade 12 in normal school in Edmonton, sort of away from everyone else, but that's how I became a teacher, of course.
Let's back up still to your early years in school. What do you recall, recess time, what do kids do? What would be the highlights of your young school days?
I don't know if there's anything particular. I thought I was just like every other child.
Yeah.
And not having brothers or sisters close to me, that made a difference. No brothers, and with a difference in age of my sisters, well, I was pretty well a lone one. And I got home on the weekends. My mother or dad would come when I was in Divide School, and I started riding horseback. 10 gates to open, and one of our teachers soon came over to my mother's and father's and they said, could she stay with me in my teacherage? And my parents thought that was fine. And her teacherage she took with her everywhere she went. It was the size of a hay rack.
Oh my.
So we had close quarters.
Mm-hmm.
And I lived with her for, I would go home, but my parents, one of them would come and get me on Friday and take me back on Monday morning for school. And when I got little older grades, I used to help her. I would correct the grade ones, arithmetic and so on and so forth.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe that was preparing me as a teacher.
Yes, certainly. Okay, now what about your move into Sangudo? When did that happen as a family?
When I moved into Sangudo, well, that was after, I will go back to when I was teaching in Coyote, and actually in craft school.
Oh.
And Victor had come home from overseas, 4 years overseas. He came home on the Sunday that following me, starting to teach there on Tuesday. And we were married the next August.
Oh.
In Edmonton.
Now this is Victor Allen, your
Yes.
first husband.
And that's the father of my 2 boys.
Yes.
And our wedding was a very quiet one. I had one of the girls that I had been going to summer school with, she was my attendant, and he had his uncle.
Oh. And where were you married?
We were married in Knox United Church Manse in Edmonton.
Oh. Okay. Let's back up a little bit. Did your family, the Williams family, move into Sangudo prior to that, though? Did they not
No,
live
they
there?
moved in afterwards.
Oh, afterwards. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Talk about your children. I know you had the 2 boys, and I know Brian, but I've forgotten the other one.
Yes, Glenn was my youngest one.
Okay.
Brian was my oldest one. And of course, as I said, he just died
Yes.
this last time. And he was just a few days from being 73 years old.
Oh, okay.
And he had cancer and very bad heart.
Hmm.
And he died up in the hospital in Whitecourt.
Yes. Tell me about Glenn. Is he still doing well?
Glenn was like, Brian was a policeman, Glenn was a policeman, and Glenn's wife was a policeman.
Oh.
But then Glenn left because he was up in the north and he said he spent more time in the courtroom. So he decided he'd become a lawyer.
Oh.
So he went back down and became a lawyer. And right now they are in Sangudo, straightening up Brian's house and so on and so forth, following his death. And they live in Nanaimo.
Oh.
And they also have a condo in Red Deer and one in the southern part of Mexico.
Oh, nice. Well, sounds like he's successful. Very good. And they have children?
They have, for children, they have a son and a daughter.
Okay.
And then they have a granddaughter and a grandson.
Okay. So everybody's all grown up. How about Brian? Did he have a family?
No.
Okay. I want to go to the time then when you lived at Sangudo and talk about the Sangudo community and what life was like there. When you lived at Sangudo as a family and what community life was like there. I recall your little white house by the Lursbergs.
Right.
Were there utilities established in town, or did you have to trek outdoors to the little house?
We had our electricity in our house and everything like that.
Okay. What year would you have moved there to Sangudo?
Oh, I don't know. I would have to guess, so.
Were you were already a teacher at that time?
Oh, yes.
And you had taught at crafts, and what were some of the other
I
places
taught at crafts, and I taught at Coyote.
Okay. Crafts, for those who don't know, it was the Meadowview, was the school
Yes.
at Meadowview, which was
Right.
where my mother and all of her
Yes.
Macintosh family went.
And then I taught in Sangudo, as you know.
Mm-hmm.
And then I taught in Red Deer.
Oh, okay. What grades did you have in Red Deer?
Well, the first time I had fallen and broken my leg when I was in Sangudo when I was teaching. And then while I was still on the cast, we moved down to Red Deer. And afterwards, I said, once I got out of the cast, I said to Victor, I think it'd be good if I'd see if I could get a teaching job. So he said, well, that was up to me. So we bought an old car so that I would have transportation if I needed it. And I went down to the superintendent's office, which at that time we called us inspector. Mm-hmm. And I asked him if there was any chance of getting a job teaching. And he said, yes. And he said, you can come on Monday. And I said, what grade? He said, well, it's a grade 7 class. Oh. He didn't tell me that I was going to be, this was beginning of, 1st of November. Oh. He didn't tell me I was already that third teacher.
Oh dear.
The first teacher had lost her job at the end of the first month, and the second one, her first one, which was October. And I was in the class, and before I left his office, I said, shall I sign some papers? He said, no, we won't worry about that right now. So I went home and thinking nothing of it, and went into the classroom on Monday, and I thought, aha, you're moving, and that one's going to move, and so on and so forth. And my classroom became very quiet. And on Friday, with no lock on the door or anything, the door opened, and in walked the superintendent. And my class was quiet and working. He said, all right, you can come down and sign your papers. So I finished the term there, and then I asked if I could go over to West Park, because I liked primary. And we had moved up onto the South Hill by this time. And he said, yes, there was a grade 2 class available up there. Sometimes I drove, and sometimes I just walked across the valley and to get up to the school. Mm-hmm. But I enjoyed teaching.
Do you recall the year that, well, I was in your grade 3 class when we started off, I think in the church basement, in the United Church basement?
Right across what had been the beginning of the school in Sangudo.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then we got moved to the basement of the little school down on the riverbank that they have recently torn down.
Is it?
Yes, it's gone now. And then finally we were moved upstairs to the nice, bright, big windows.
Yeah.
And my recollection of that year, probably one of the highlights of my school days, was being entered in the music festival together with Bev Keller.
Yeah.
And we sang a duet in harmony and got an excellence. I will never forget, I even remember the tune, the melody. Okay, and how about the community itself? Were you involved in any community activities or joined any groups?
Church. Mm-hmm. And pretty well that would be it. And anything that was got to do with the school.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And we had neighbors that we visited with. Mm-hmm. And a lot of my spare time was spent playing an organ.
Oh.
And it was a pedal organ that my grandfather had bought at an auction sale for my mother when she was a little girl. So you can imagine how old the organ was. And right now my son has it, and he's going to make it into a desk, but not change the pedals or anything. But somehow he's going to use something for a desk. I don't know how he's going to do it, but anyway. And I would have been quite happy kept on playing it. But Ian said, oh no, you have to pedal. It must be harder on your legs. Hence, I have an electric organ.
Electric, yes. And so do you still play?
Oh, yes.
Oh, good, good. Did you ever play the organ in the church?
No.
So,
I never thought I was good enough.
and you never have taken any musical lessons? Is it all just by ear?
But I know music because, of course, as a teacher I learned it. Mm-hmm. And I can take a sheet of music and learn the tune. As soon as I learn the tune, put the
Then you don't
music away,
need
and
the
then
sheet anymore.
I put it into whatever key I want, whether I want to put it in G or whether I put it in the C.
Good, wonderful.
So,
Yeah, well, don't ever quit playing. That'll keep you young. Okay, and so how about health? The whole matter of health and medical systems. What do you recall, even from when you were a young girl? Did you ever get any diseases or have to go to the hospital for any reason?
well, to get my tonsils out, which was, of course, ordinary.
Yes.
And otherwise, I was relatively healthy. I've had pneumonia once, but I was young then. And as I said, I've had the cancer twice. So
Yes. Do you recall the polio epidemic, for one?
yes, at one time, our school was closed, and so Ida and I stayed at home, and we didn't have to ride Barney to school in. We had
Barney was the horse?
the horse, and we had 2 miles to go.
Yes.
That was it. We were going to Roseland School.
Did you have any of those childhood diseases like chickenpox and measles?
Oh yes,
Yeah.
I think everyone did.
Yes, we did.
Whooping cough.
Okay, let's move on then to the second love of your life. Tell us about your how you got together with Ian.
Well, I first met Ian at square dances, and he came, and he was so shy that if you stood beside him, you might as well forget that he was there for speaking. He knew how to dance, but he didn't talk to anyone.
Oh.
He just danced. Never brought a date with him. And so I met, we after Victor and I moved to Red Deer, and Victor was already gone. I was amazed at, from when I was Easter holidays, I wasn't at Joseph Wells teaching that day, and I got this phone call from Ian saying, "Can I come up for a cup of coffee?" And I thought, well, that man is so shy that what's he doing coming up? And I said, "Oh yes, come up." So I hurried up and got the coffee ready and some cookies, and a taxi arrived in front of the door, and Ian came in, and we had coffee, and I was amazed he talked fluently. He had taken a Christopher's course, and it just made all the difference in the world for him. So then when the hour was up, the taxi was in front of the house again, and he was taken down to where the men were that were there for a purebred auction sale. That's what they were there for, and why Ian was along with them. And then in the future, I was surprised to start getting phone calls and an occasional letter, and then he overcame his dislike of driving good enough that he would drive down to Red Deer, and he stayed at a hotel, and he would visit me. And eventually that led to our marriage.
Yes.
And he had traveled very little other than that little bit. He made all the arrangements for our marriage, including the minister. And he said to the minister when he phoned him from at Maythorpe, he said, "I would like some help." And the minister laughed. He said, "Ian, I do not know a thing about farming. I just am a minister." And he said, "Well, I know, that's the point of it. Would you perform the marriage?" And he didn't realize that Ian was even going with anyone.
Oh.
So he said, "Well, I would like my marriage on the 27th of December." And I had already resigned for just at Easter, at Christmas time from my school in Red Deer.
He wasted no time.
And he was a very knowledgeable man, and having had this Christopher course, he could talk fluently. He had no trouble. And our church here can tell you that he could sell more tickets for their suppers than anyone else.
Oh, wonderful. Will you hold up the picture of the two of you? Let's see. Oh, that's nice. It shows up very nicely there. Okay, thank you.
So
Okay.
so the shy man got over his shyness once he took the Christopher course.
Yes.
It made all the difference in the world for him.
Now you moved to, he had a farm, did he not?
Pardon?
He had a farm and you moved there?
Mm-hmm. And he was surprised that I could do so many things on the farm. He just had a small truck that he used most of the time, you know, like this quarter ton.
Mm-hmm.
But he had a big truck as well. And I learned to drive that, and I could follow him when he was combining. And when he got it full enough, I would take it into Sangudo and dump it off at the elevator and hurry back to get back for him. And if he got, his combine had to be emptied before, in the meantime, he would go to one of the granaries.
Mm-hmm. Wow. You're a real farm lady. I didn't realize that. So Ian's farm was down on the Pembina, was it not?
Yes.
To the north and east?
He was north. It was north of there. Because before it was Sangudo, when I was teaching there, once we were married, when Victor and I, he was across the river, so I couldn't cross the river every day to teach school.
No.
But luckily the school just 2 miles from the farm that Victor took was open for a new teacher. And I got that job, and I taught there and that's where I was when my boys were born.
Oh, okay. What school was that?
That was craft school.
That was at Crafts. Oh,
Yeah.
yes, yes.
And then we moved to Sangudo, and of course I taught there, and then I taught in Red Deer and so on and so forth.
But at craft school you had the whole gamut of grades?
You have all 8 grades, and did a Coyote too.
Yes. You must have taught
And at
some of
Crafts,
my aunts and uncles.
At Crafts I also had 2 boys sitting in that were taking grade 10 correspondence,
Oh,
and I helped them with that.
yes. Would you have taught, let's see, my youngest uncle, Uncle David McIntosh,
He was one of my students.
he's now getting to his late 80s, so there couldn't have been a...
I taught him grade 8, that was his last year of school.
Yes, yes.
He didn't go on from there.
Yes. Okay, thinking back, are there any sort of highlights that really stand out in your memory? What would be your crowning glory, your most vivid recollections, perhaps?
It's so hard to say because I've done so many things,
Yes.
and when you've gone to 20-some countries,
Tell us about that. You and Ian did some trips in
Ian and
various
I
places. Tell us about
traveled
those.
extensively. And when our first trip was not that far, we heard that Westlock was going to have a bus trip from Westlock to eastern shores of eastern Canada. So we took that, and we really liked it and thought it was so much fun, and you didn't have to look up for a hotel, it was already provided. And the next time we started flying, and we flew to 20 other countries.
Oh. Well, which would have been your favorites? I don't think we'll hear all 20, but what?
Well, the one reason that we flew to Brazil was that the family had been getting letters from relatives, but they had never met them. So Ian thought we should go down and meet his relatives, and we went down there, and they were very, very nice, but we were surprised. There was one of them didn't speak a word of English.
We're Portuguese. Brazil is Portuguese, isn't it?
Yeah, but
Yes.
they had come from Scotland and England, the parents had, so, but that's just the way it went.
Yeah, yeah.
And for the rest of the trips, it was so good. I really liked Switzerland, but there was no country that we went to that I didn't enjoy.
Oh, good.
Tours that we, took in while we were there.
Were you always a part of a tour group?
Yes, usually. Yeah. Once, I could just say yes. We started out with a tour group, even if we were going to meet some relatives in England, and we had never met them before, and we met them. And so.
Oh, wonderful. I'd like you to think about what changes you have seen since your childhood to now. What do you think might be some of the most impactful changes that have occurred over the years that have changed society, or that you think have played a big role in how we are today as compared to our youth?
It's so dependent upon your political party.
Mm-hmm.
And I think very much so. And so as a result, you were very careful when you went out to vote.
Mm-hmm. Would you say, what would you say about technical advances? You've seen them all, right? What can you think of as the first technical thing? What about a phone? When did you first get a telephone?
There's so many things that have changed
Yeah.
that it's hard to realize. Even just driving around in the country, there's such a difference
The roads,
from the
road conditions.
horses and buggy and
Mm-hmm.
and of course flying has made such a change in my life and everyone else's.
Yes.
And now it's a real worry what's happening over in Ukraine and Russia.
Oh, definitely.
It's so frightening that it might be World War III.
Yes. It's
And like Victor's father had served overseas in First World War, and Victor served 4 years over the Second World War. Well, I'm hoping that my grandson isn't going to be serving in a war.
Oh, certainly. It wouldn't be the same type of war.
Oh no, but that doesn't mean it'll be any better.
No, that's for certain. Television is another thing that came in as.
Well, the television is really something. And I remember that even a radio was so important when we were a child. And I can remember being out, my parents were out milking the cows, and I was sitting and listening to the radio, and there was a program where if you chose, and the right could tell them what the name of the tune was, and it was right, and they told your letter, you would win a prize, but you didn't know what the prize was going to be. And my parents came in, and I said, "Can I send this one in?" And they said, "Are you sure you knew what it is?" And I said, "Yes." But Mother said, we are saving every penny we can for a battery for our car. And my dad finally said, "Oh, just let her send this one, we'll part with it." She said, "That's 3 cents for the stamp." And he said, "I know, but let her try." Well, I tried. And when next week when the program came on, my mother and dad were in from milking cows, strange to say, and we listened, and they said, "And the winner is Merle Williams from Chair Hill." And then someone else said, "What was the prize?" "Well," he said, "it's a battery for her car."
Really?
So, those things are quite memorable in your life.
Really? Oh, that's interesting. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh.
Okay. Well, did we miss anything that comes to mind?
Pardon?
Did we miss anything that you might like to tell? I love that last little story. It's those stories that are so memorable.
I don't know. You have so many good memories.
Yes.
At least I consider that I've had such a good life. And I know some haven't.
No.
And you feel very sorry for them.
Mm-hmm.
But I was always blessed with, it seemed to me, really good.
Yeah. Well, that sounds like a good place to stop. Thank you so much, Merle. It's been a delight.